Can only assume is a misguided sense of social justice. But the thing is, everyone and their dog by now is well aware that this is doing the students no good. It's not preparing them for life in the real world. It is in fact completely warping their perceptions of reality and their expectations from reality. And nowhere is this better exemplified than the beatnik finger clicking in agreement when a speaker says something that everyone agrees with. But worst of all, in a policy that the NUS, the National Union of Students, has implemented, where they replace clapping, which can be alarming and scary, with jazz hands at student union events. That's right, standing there and waving your palms at the person speaking or performing is now the appropriate response instead of clapping, because clapping could trigger some kind of terrible memories or something when they got clapped at for... I don't know. I just don't know. But this is something that really happened in 2015, I swear to you. I'm not making this up. So while Western universities are building a better class of idiots, let's have a look at the principles they are building upon. Number 4. 2015 was the year of identity politics. For those not in the know, this is the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy's definition of identity politics, and in this video I will be talking about left-wing identity politics as opposed to right-wing identity politics, which will probably be featuring heavily in 2016's This Year in Stupid. So, rather than organising solely around belief systems, programmatic manifestos or party affiliation, identity political formations typically aim to secure the political freedom of a specific constituency marginalised within its larger context. Members of that constituency assert or reclaim ways of understanding their distinctiveness that challenge dominant oppressive characterizations with the greater goal of self-determination. Why? Because it's fucking easy, that's why. It sounds complicated here, but it's really not. I mean, it's difficult to understand a programmatic manifesto or understand belief systems or party affiliation, but looking at someone else and saying, oh, we share a characteristic, and that is what we should protest on or advocate for, is so easy, even retarded college students can do it. It's important to remember that identity politics is generally a first world problem, usually because people in the second and third worlds generally have much more to worry about than someone misgendering them. Which is why refugee shelters for LGBT people, lesbian, gay, bisexual and trans, are going unused in Sweden, because it turns out that refugees from Eritrea, Somalia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria don't really include many LGBT individuals. And the thing is, as soon as you decide that, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take identity, I'm going to apply it to everything, it means you can apply it to anything. Take, for example, the University of California in Berkeley. Their Center for the Study of Sexual Culture has a Queering Agriculture course. Queering Agriculture, Food Safety in the Nation's Capital, and Crises of Reproductive American Familialism. Sounds like total bollocks, and it probably is. I have no idea what queer agriculture actually is, and you know, I don't care. Because whatever they say, I know is going to be total horseshit. But it doesn't matter, because identities are very valuable. At least, the statistics using identities are. Take, for example, last year in gaming when the ESA turned around and said, oh, by the way, half of gamers are women. And now adult women are the largest demographic in gaming. You can imagine how surprised everyone was. Unsurprisingly, most women who play games shun the gamer label. Now, there are two narratives at play here. The first one is that gamer is an outdated label that people prefer not to use because it's associated with bigotry, intolerance, and all these other kind of horrible labels that progressives use in their war of identity politics. The second narrative is that most women do not adopt the label gamer because they are only playing casual games. Gaming is not a significant hobby for them, and they are using these games to pass the time. Of course, this does not matter. What matters are the identity of the people represented in video games. And apparently more female heroes are appearing in big budget games due to social justice pressure. And apparently, the diversity report card is in. Video games passed in 2015, albeit barely. Personally, I don't really care about identity politics and representation in video games, but a pass is a pass, so fuck you barely. We can now tell social justice warriors to shut up when it comes to talking about identity in video games. They started the war, they have now won the war, so now there's nothing left to talk about. Well, except for when it comes to mocking them. Because there is a spectre haunting video games. The spectre of Gamergate. Honestly, I don't think there's all that much left to say about Gamergate. I think that it's kind of come and gone. By the end of 2015, there's not really much going on with it. But it is nice to see that the spectre of Gamergate still haunts the SJW imagination. And that is priceless. It's also difficult to estimate the damage that the identity politicians did to themselves while attempting to fight Gamergate. For example, Wikipedia voted to ban some editors from editing gender-related articles due to Gamergate. These activists made such a nuisance of themselves during the Gamergate controversy that they have literally made themselves persona non grata when it comes to editing Wikipedia. It probably doesn't sound like much, but if you look at the Gamergate article, it's still a bloody mess. So it's nice to see that these people have shot themselves in the foot for the next future gender ideologue war that comes along. Like with all things, it's important to remember that not all people engaging in identity politics and gender and racial activism are bad people with bad intentions, and it's easy to forget that because there are so many bad people with bad intentions taking part in this kind of activism. Some people are just really out of touch and so start cringeworthy campaigns like Starbucks' Race Together Cup campaign. They try to encourage their baristas to engage customers in conversation about racial issues in the United States. Now, I don't know how they thought this was going to be a good idea, but nobody was on board with this. I mean, don't get me wrong, the baristas probably per capita are the most qualified people, as I imagine a large percentage of them are university graduates who can't find another job with their intersectional identity politics degrees. But frankly, that just makes them the sort of person you will never want to have a discussion on race with, ever. Unsurprisingly, after the public backlash, Starbucks decided to end the Race Together campaign and stop harassing their customers on the issue of race. They claimed it was their idea, but come on Starbucks, we know that it wasn't. This was not in accordance with your original plan. In fact, it's the complete opposite of your original plan. Your original plan was to talk about race. Everyone was like, no, that's really weird, shut up. And you were like, yeah, that's what we planned all along. Not buying it. Other people who are participating in identity politics, possibly without even realising it, and certainly without attempting any malice by doing so, are authors who are allowing their work to be co-opted and changed by identity politicians. The two most recent ones have been Stephen King and J.K. Rowling, who have allowed very well-established characters to be co-opted under the guise of them not being racist. In King's self-proclaimed magnum opus, The Dark Tower, the character of Roland Deschain, a character based on Clint Eastwood's character, the Man with No Name from the Dollars trilogy, has been earmarked to be played by Idris Elba, who I am informed is a fine actor, and I have no doubt about it. However, he does not have what King would refer to regularly as bombardier's eyes. These are piercing blue eyes with 1,000-yard stare, the sort of thing that Clint Eastwood was famous for. The character of Roland is white, very clearly, and the fact that he's white does actually play a significant role with other characters within the books. So large sections of the books are simply going to have to be rewritten into Hollywood scripts, completely warping the main narrative of the story. A similar thing seems to be happening with Rowling endorsing a black Hermione Granger in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which, as I understand it, is a theatre production, with the woman pictured being Hermione Granger. Now, Rowling has gone on Twitter and claimed that white skin was never specified, except when white skin was specified. Hermione's white face was sticking out from behind a tree. "Harry, hurry!" she mouthed. Not only that, but Rowling was instrumental in the creation of the Harry Potter movies. She approved the casting of Emma Watson to play Hermione Granger, Emma Watson being a young white girl. Now, I hate to have to make such a big deal out of race, I really do, but these are established characters. What King and Rowling are doing here is virtue signalling. They're saying, look, I am not a racist, I don't hate black people, I swear to God, because they are clearly not very experienced with identity politics. But what they are saying without realising it is that the experiences of black and white people are interchangeable. Now, I would like it if that were the case, but it is not. And that is a very, very important point to identity politicians. In fact, it is central to their entire ideological perspective. If the lived experiences of black and white people were the same, there would be no grounds to claim oppression. There would be no reason to prefer a black person over a white person. There would, in short, be nothing for identity politics to operate on. Now, I don't blame these authors for simply acquiescing to the demands of social justice warriors, especially given how aggressive they can be. There's simply no benefit to the authors to fight for the cause. There's nothing in it for them. What are they going to gain? All they're going to get is a lot of hate aimed at them for something they don't even believe strongly in, the idea that black people should be treated differently to white people. And so why not compromise the characters? Why not compromise the integrity of the story? All the incentives are pointed in that direction. But this is the problem with identity politics, especially ones based on race. They're deceptive. Look at where the road you're travelling along leads. White students barred from meeting at Ryerson University because they were not racialized, because they didn't come from a racial minority, because they were not diverse. They were prohibited from attending a meeting. It was the same when diversity officer at Goldsmiths, Bahar Mustafa, asked white men not to attend her diversity meeting. I'm sorry you're white, you're not welcome here. During the student protests that we covered earlier, Missouri protesters literally segregated themselves based on race, asking their white allies simply to leave the area because they were not diverse enough. Of course, this brand of identity politics reaches into literature as well, where you will see articles titled "In Defense of Excluding White Male Authors." I really have to ask King and Rowling, is this something that you support? If race was interchangeable, why would this be necessary?
Where are you going?
There is no good reason to alter the race of an existing character, especially ones as so well formed as Roland Deschain and Hermione Granger. It's not creating a diverse cast of characters, it's pandering to political correctness. And the thing is, once you start going down this slippery slope, there is no end to it. Because what you have told everyone is that there is actually no real reason that things are as they are in your world. You destroy your own internal consistency. Think about it. Roland Deschain, the gunslinger, with white man bombardier's eyes, he now has to have had 2 black parents, which means that the society he came from can't possibly be racist. And what are the odds of some ancient Wild West fantasy world not being racist? I mean, he can't go into a town and be unassuming if he is the only black man in town. Even if they don't hate black men, that's an unusual event. What percentage of Gilead are black? I mean, I don't ever recall any of them being black. So now you have a black population in what was otherwise a non-black civilization. And again, there's nothing wrong with a black civilization, but this is the thing, you have to now retcon everything. And like I said, because nothing is sacred in your world anymore, nothing has a firm foundation, anything can be changed. Santa Claus should not be a white man anymore. Do you all support this? You know, maybe Santa Claus should be black. What difference does it make? It's just a white guy being changed into a black guy. There's no harm there. Why not sign a petition to ban the song White Christmas? Because it's insulting to people of colour because it includes the word white. What's wrong with that? It's just a song. Just ban it. Just get rid of it. We're talking about identity politics. We're not talking about things that are happening for a good reason. You know, like the reason that Hermione is a young white girl. Because she was born to white parents. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Everything's interchangeable. So what we're going to do is ban things that include white because they are microaggressions, according to one student. And that is just the tip of a very racist iceberg. Do you really want to know what's under the surface? White men must be stopped. The very future of mankind depends on it. For 500 years, they've exploited their fellow man and plundered the planet. It's time they rein themselves in. White men, now born with original sin. The time for replacing white supremacy with new values is now. And just as some whites played a part in ending slavery, colonialism, Jim Crow segregation, which is on its way back, and South African apartheid, which again is on its way back, there is surely a role whites can play in restraining other whites in this era. So the question is, do you want to be restrained in any way because of your race? Is that a factor that people should be judging you on? Hateful, regressive professor. If you are a white male, you don't deserve to live. Noel Ignatieff, a professor at Massachusetts College of Art, has for years advocated the total elimination of Caucasians. During his final lecture before retirement last Monday, he told his white male students, "You don't deserve to live, you are a cancer, you are a disease." White males have never contributed anything positive to the world. They only murder, exploit, and oppress non-whites. At least a white woman can have sex with a black man and make a brown baby. But what can a white male do? He is good for nothing. Slavery, genocides against Aboriginal peoples, and massive land confiscation, the Inquisition, the Holocaust, white males are all to blame. Therefore, all white males should be blamed for these things. You maintain your white male privilege only by oppressing, discriminating against, and enslaving others. Well, call me crazy, but it sounds like the white men are the ones being discriminated against. I don't know of any legitimate way that anyone can actually discriminate against anyone who is not a white man. And this is not by any means any kind of rare opinion. I mean, this was to a standing ovation from his class. This was in the Diversity Chronicle, completely agreed with. This is not a rare opinion. Look at this from the New York Times. Dear White America. I'm not going to read the whole thing now, but what this man is trying to do with this article is ascribe blame for any crime a member of the white race has committed to all members of the white race. He wants all white people to feel guilty that they are white, because in the past, before you were born, white people did bad things to non-white people. You might be thinking, well, that's a scary line of logic to travel down, because by that logic, every black man in Africa is responsible for the white women in Sweden who have been gang raped by various immigrants, and that's true. You might be thinking, well, if that's true, every person in Japan now is guilty for the rape of Nanjing. And that's precisely why this collectivist line of logic is bullshit. Nobody is responsible for any of the things that George Yancey here is trying to make them feel responsible for. Purely based on their fucking race. If you are white and you are reading this letter, I ask that you don't run to seek shelter from your own racism. Don't hide from your responsibility. Rather begin right now to practice being vulnerable. Being neither a good white person nor a liberal white person will get you off the proverbial hook. I consider myself to be a decent human being, yet I'm sexist. Take another deep breath. I ask you to try to be unsutured. If that term brings to mind a state of pain, open flesh, it is meant to do so. After all, it is painful to let go of your white innocence, to use this letter as a mirror, one that refuses to show you what you want to see, one that demands that you look at the lies you tell yourself, so that you don't feel the weight of responsibility for those who live under the yoke of whiteness. Your whiteness. Identity politics is the cancer of the Western world. Look at this. Introducing the most derided ethnic group in Britain. Young white men. These government polls show that the most derided type of person in society is a white man in his 20s. At least we can deduce from this that we don't live in a white supremacist society. We are not living in a society that thinks white men are privileged, or privileges them, above other people. So if identity is something you can just pick and choose as you will, and we live in a society that demonizes white people and males, is it any wonder that people are simply choosing to identify as something else? Let's start with Rachel Dolezal, who was the president of the Washington branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. She's white. She's so fucking white, there isn't a picture of her in existence that makes her look black, especially when put next to actual black people. I really can only imagine what was going through the heads of the black people who had to fucking deal with her. But the thing is, she's not black. She's not even slightly black. In fact, her ancestry is German and Czech and Swiss. Look how fucking white she is! She's literally wearing some sort of fucking fake tan and she has crimped her hair to make it look like black hair. I mean, honestly, this is... I mean, what are we honestly just gonna go, well, yeah, I mean, she identifies as black, though. I mean, she says she identifies as black. So we're just gonna be like, okay, I guess if you want to just tell everyone you're black, then you can be black. It's just like Black Lives Matter activist Sean King, who goes on bizarre Twitter rants against white men and what they must think holding big black guns, which honestly just sounds like fucking projection. I mean, look at the guy's face and the attempt he makes at looking black. The way he styles his hair, the little moustache and goatee, everything he can do. But what a surprise, both of his parents are white. And just look at the fucking guy. This guy might pass as Hispanic, but there is no fucking way anyone is ever going to be fooled that this guy is black. I'm fucking sorry, Sean. I'm really sorry. And unsurprisingly, these are not the only cases of people desperately trying to become black from being white. They are just the most high-profile ones. Since we're on the topic of transitioning and identity, let's talk about transgender people. Now, I'm actually a lot more sympathetic to transgenderism than I am to, I don't know, transracialism, whatever they call it. Because gender actually is a series of social constructs. Of course, these are deeply informed by biological realities, but there's no getting around the fact that gender actually is a social performance. Gender roles are things that you do, biological sex is what you are. It's one of the few things that social justice warriors are actually right about, but then they go on to be remarkably wrong when they say it's not connected at all to biology. But the thing is, like with all things of this nature, and the same reason that Sean King and Rachel Dolezal went to such lengths to try and make themselves look black, you have to be able to persuade people who don't know who you are. If you can't, no one is going to believe that you are the thing you are claiming to be. So if a feminine man decides that he's going to take hormone injections, get breast implants, and undergo surgery to physically transform himself into the closest facsimile of a woman that he can manage, fine. Why not let him adopt the gender role of being a woman? Who am I to say no? You know, and if this person does a reasonable job of looking like a woman, then fine. I don't see why anyone would really need to complain about that, unless they were about to engage in a romantic relationship with them, and this information wasn't being disclosed. We know scientifically that male and female brains actually do operate in a different way, and if a man happens to have been born with a brain that operates more like a woman's brain than a man's brain, fine. Let him do whatever he needs to do to become the person he really wants to be. I can tolerate that, pronouns and all. But what I can't tolerate is the example of Zoe Tur and Ben Shapiro. I'll play the clip so you can see exactly what I mean.
You don't know what you're talking about. You're not educated on genetics.
To discuss the genetics?
Well, no,
what
no.
are your genetics?
Joey, I stay away from the genetics and back to the brain scans.
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Yeah, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political discussion.
You know, I actually expected better of Ben Shapiro here. What you were meant to say, Ben, is that's not very ladylike. Because it's not. Look at the dynamic going on here. Zoe Tur probably outweighs Ben Shapiro by about 50 pounds. Ben Shapiro is kind of a petite guy. He's not a big dude. Zoe Tur has got a jaw like a fucking anvil. Wearing a blonde wig or growing hair long and putting on a fucking dress is fooling nobody. It's unfortunate, but some people physically are never actually going to look like the thing they want to look like. Threatening people who decide that they're not going to play into your identity politics is not the way to get anything done. It's certainly not the way to get people on your side. You catch a lot more flies with honey than vinegar, and you give your opponents less opportunities to file police reports against you for assault. And Zoe, ambulances don't take people home. And of course, we can't talk about transgenderism without Bruce Jenner's transition into Caitlyn Jenner and her appearance on the cover of Vanity Fair. This was a huge deal, especially for the progressive press, who've been pushing this agenda. Now, as I'm aware, he's pre-operation, so technically he is still a man. I mean, chromosomally he would be anyway, but physically he is still male. The excitement around Caitlyn Jenner was really weird. She got loads of awards just for being brave and coming out, even though everyone seems kind of fine with it, and it's the people who are opposed to it that are the ones who are being ostracized these days. But the crowning moment of this is when Glamour magazine honored her as Woman of the Year. Again, I don't care if a guy wants to transform himself into a woman. I don't care. I don't care if he wants to do these things. But come on, there has to be a limit where we say, look, the woman of the year can't have XY chromosomes and a penis. I mean, there's got to be a limit to that, isn't there? I mean, that's ridiculous, isn't it? It's not just me. I mean, this is just... It's really beyond the pale. When... I mean, are we going to have, like, you know, Man of the Year? I mean, obviously, we're never going to have a Man of the Year fucking award. But if we were to have a Man of the Year award, would we be okay if the Man of the Year had a vagina and breasts? And, I don't know, had breastfed a bunch of kids? Because I'm not joking when I say that there are progressive outlets and progressive activists out there who literally think that there is a troubling erasure of trans parents who breastfeed. I mean, call me crazy, but if you want to adopt another gender role, fine. If you want to convert yourself to another gender, fine. But don't then say, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I'm a man, I'm going to do a man's role, convert myself into a man, and then I'm going to breastfeed. That's not the man's role, that's a woman's role, biologically and sociologically, so why would you think that's acceptable? Anyway, Caitlyn Jenner got a lot of support from the progressives, with them declaring that South Park's depiction of Caitlyn Jenner was one of the show's most despicable moments. How could they? I agree with Munir Elfwig. It doesn't look anything like the transphobic cartoon of her. Not a damn thing. Not a thing. Elfwig, where have I heard that name before? But the real fun started when Caitlyn Jenner said that she still planned to vote Republican in 2016. Oh yeah, you can already hear the brakes on the progressive narrative train screeching to a halt. Wait, whoa. You're voting Republican. But you're transgender. Apparently Caitlyn Jenner's one of those rare people who decides to vote for someone based on policies rather than gender. I'm so sorry, Justin Trudeau. But you can imagine the progressives' confusion when they're like, yeah, but you're transgender and you're voting Republican. And what's even more crazy is that she wasn't in favour of gay marriage either. Imagine that, just what is going on? A transgender person who doesn't buy into our brand of politics. But this article really sums it up. She says, despite my personal beliefs, I will not infringe on someone else's life. Yet, Ellen DeGeneres wasn't satisfied with that. She seemed determined to either make Jenner change her mind right there on the show, or else expose her hypocrisy. She was not just allowed to enjoy a different opinion. And that's all this is. You know, I have no problem with people doing or believing as they want, as long as they're leaving other people alone. I really don't. And as long as they're taking responsibility for their own actions. However, I do think the progressive press needs to be slightly more discerning and possibly less into listening and believing the first transgender story that crosses their path that day. Case in point, the example of a transgender father who left his family to start life as a 6-year-old girl after his wife said, stop being trans or leave. Now, on the surface of it you might think, well, that's, you know, his choice. He's not hurting anyone, apart from the 7 kids he's abandoning. Maybe he just really wants to become a transgender girl who regresses back to being a 6-year-old. I mean, okay, it's his mental problem, but what's the big deal? What's the big deal? I mean, why don't we just embrace this? Why don't we just accept this? It's just something people do, apparently. Well, call me a transphobe, but I really think that there is something more to this story than meets the eye. I mean, there's something about the adoptive parents holding Stephanie in a bra and a neck collar on a leash. I mean, I don't want to be a doubting Thomas, but it really makes me think that the trans identity thing is more of an excuse to be able to, I don't know, abandon your family and children and live like a fucking degenerate. But not only that, to get the press to cover this in a favourable light, as if you are some poor victimised person. But at the end of the day, as long as it's consenting adults, I guess I really have no say in it. You know, it's nothing to do with me. The problem I have is when we start sort of foisting this kind of identity play on children. 80 primary school pupils a year seeking help to change gender. Really? For people outside of the UK, that's from ages 5 to 11. You know, prepubescent children who are apparently like, you know what, I'm just not happy with my gender identity. Up to 20 primary school aged children a year in the UK are now seeking help towards potentially changing their gender amid signs of classmates encouraging each other to do so. In some cases, children as young as 4 are already in the process of transitioning to another sex. And some schools are seeing signs of a cluster effect, with a number of pupils coming forward to seek support towards a possible change after one takes the first step. I don't think these ideologues should be allowed to have any kind of interaction with children. I don't care if these children legitimately are transitioning. I don't care if all of them are legitimately transitioning. They are not old enough to understand the full implications of what they're doing. They are not old enough to understand exactly how this is going to affect the rest of their lives, especially if they end up getting some kind of surgery or hormone therapy to retard or otherwise change their development and growth. I mean, they may well have this phase that they're going through, and then by the time they get to 16 think, well, that was wrong. I agree that we should be tolerant and not demonize children or anyone, really, for being curious, wanting to experiment with gender identity and all this sort of stuff, but we shouldn't be fucking encouraging it. And we certainly shouldn't be criminalizing people who simply don't want to go along with it. However, New York City transgender laws define property owners $250,000 over improper pronouns, which means it's now just fine to criminalize the people who simply don't want to go along with it. So, property owners who identify employees or tenants